Hello and welcome to the Walk Around podcast powered by JM&A Group, where we talk all things automotive. Today on the podcast, we've got Kevin Joostema. And Kevin is managing partner and co-founder of a company called CarEd, which is a media and digital marketing service provider for both consumers and the automotive space. In addition to that, Kevin is the president of the Washington Automotive Press Association and has served on the board for 4 years. You know, he's a super interesting guy, Elliot. He's got so many different backgrounds when you look at his automotive experience. He started in product planning. He's got experience with architecture. He's a designer of sorts. He's a writer. I think he gave us great perspective.
Yeah, it was an interesting view on the business in terms of, where the business is going and really what retailers can do to be relevant to consumers today.
Yeah, I think it was really interesting to talk to him. So let's take a walk around with Kevin Joostema. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for joining us on the walk around.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin.
We are really excited to have you as our guest because, right off the bat, you've got such an interesting background, having worked within the industry, and now you write about the industry.
Right.
And you've also been outside the industry as a consumer. So talk to us a little bit about, how you got on this path in the automotive business, and welcome. Let's get started.
Well, thank you for having me, Mark Elliott. It's really great to be here. I know it's been a few months in arranging, so I'm excited to be talking with you. My own personal path has been one of as you mentioned, I studied architecture, I'm interested in design, industrial design. So I kind of came at the auto industry from the industrial design side.
Sure.
So it's just exciting. One of my jobs was at Honda R&D, their advanced product planning group. I was the first American appointed to be the division director. And the offices are literally above the design studio. So whenever there'd be something stressful going on, it's always great just to take a walk through the studio, smell the clay. There's designers creating stuff. And I learned one of my best business lessons there is that what you learn is from the process itself, not necessarily what you're trying to achieve by doing it.
Yeah.
You have creationism, not in the biblical sense of creationism, but you're trying to create something and you learn by trying to create it. And it was such a wonderful job to be able to just have that freedom of you worry about the end result, but, and enjoy learning as you're doing.
Sure.
In my own personal path, I've looked for companies that let you do that. If you can find a job like that, it's great.
Yeah, we talk all the time about it's about the journey, not the destiny.
And it fits right into that life theme for sure.
Yeah. So how did you transition away from design? So what led you to that change? I think a lot of our audience, and this has sort of been a theme throughout this season, has been about, career paths and, how people get into the different things that they get into. And, so how did you transition out of this? Why did you transition out?
Yeah, how did you become?
I was from the product planning perspective, so I'm not a designer.
Right.
That is a special skill and talent. But the transition away just came from some of the entrepreneurial bend, and perhaps some of your audience can relate to that, especially the private business people that have started the retail environment. They're entrepreneurs and they're doing new things with their businesses. And so that started leading me away from the corporate structure. I've worked for Honda, the Volkswagen Group for the Volkswagen brand, and then for Cadillac on the luxury side. And so been exposed to, the German business side, the Asian business side, and American business side. And still that pull to create something new, the whole creating and process. I started a media company called CarEd and just kind of jumped off the building and tried to start it. So that was the appeal. And I've met actually people in dealerships through my career when I was at Volkswagen and launching new products and talking to dealers. There's a lot of people at retail points that they're starting their career and they're learning how consumers act and how they want to interact and buy cars. And they're thinking in their head, they're like, oh, this is what I want to do in 10 years. I want to be a business owner. I want to start a media company as well. So it was purely down that path. I mean, it seems I was on the corporate side, perhaps a little longer than somebody might have been that's trying to start something, but I got there nonetheless.
So Kevin, let's jump into it in terms of your current work experience. You test drive a lot of product, which is exciting.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people get that opportunity.
Yeah.
And we're curious, just what is exciting for you right now when you look at the different manufacturers and product, the explosion of EV, not literally, of course, it's more of just so many models.
Hey,
coming.
be careful with that.
Exactly.
You might get a call from Mr. Musk.
Exactly. But what's exciting for you right now when you think about product?
For the actual product, it's a big category. They call it driver assistance systems, but the technologies that on the inside that kind of help the driver have a little more ease in driving, be it for better safety, be it for better drive experience, those types of products. So like one in particular, one very small thing is many cars now have lane keep assist, for example.
Right.
Yeah.
It gives you a little beep or the steering wheel vibrates if you're going off your lane. Well, the next step of that is this lane guidance, which actually guides you between the 2 points to stay centered in the lane. So you're not like drifting to the edge of each lane. And it doesn't beep or anything. It just actually pulls you back to the center. And I experienced it for the first time on a drive for the new Toyota Corolla a few years ago. So it's on like the most entry point of products. But the experience of having that centered in the lane, especially when you're cruising on a highway or going on a curvy road, it would actually start to turn like a few milliseconds, before I would start to turn myself because it's keeping me in the center of the lane. So it was really.
So were you finding yourself?
It was exciting. It was exciting to have that because it was guiding me down the right path, and it wasn't taking any control away from me or anything like that. Sometimes that gets a little. Pure drivers like to have that pure control, but for the everyday driver, it was actually like, oh, there's a curve coming up. Yeah, I got to recognize that's coming. So it was like kind of an alert without being obnoxiously alert.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that one because I've definitely, I don't know if you've done the wobble where you kind of
for the lane keep assist,
Yes.
You go over back and then you wobble the other way.
Exactly, and then you're before you know it, you feel like you're on a boat. But but it's interesting because these features are designed to be safer, to help us all be safer. And you go back before pandemic, and if you looked on the cover of Automotive News, I mean mainstream media as well, autonomous. The amount of money that was being poured into autonomous was amazing. And I think what you're describing, driver assist functions, are a very maybe primitive form of autonomous driving.
Sure.
But now, post-pandemic, or if it's post or, whatever you want to call it, you don't hear a lot about autonomous, all about EV right now.
Yeah, no.
How do you think that's going to take shape? Do you think autonomous is going to make a comeback, and rise like the Phoenix here? Or
I actually don't. I mean, I think it'll come up in a very businessy way. It's not going to be through the individual consumer. It's going to be to fleet management companies that are trying to have operational cost efficiencies for their fleets, things like that. I don't think it's going to be the one-on-one consumer demand for it. The only place it might come out for the consumer is like on highway cruising, like what GM has done with their cruise on the highway. The technology it might be there. So somebody that has a 30-minute drive on a highway can just be like, okay, I'm on this straight line for the next 30 minutes. Okay, car, take over. And then when I exit, let me engage back in. And I watch Westworld, and I saw that on Westworld or somewhere. It was on like a more sci-fi type show, and I was like, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense. You engage when you got to keep making turns and things, but for the 20 minutes of cruising you're doing, just let it take over, and I'm going to check my phone.
Yeah, it's just so interesting. I can remember the coverage around autonomy, and it was like the car business was going to be transforming in the next couple of years. And now we see a shift more back to personal ownership and consumer preference. But, on that note, Kevin, I mentioned you do a lot of test drives.
Yep.
Where do you see that playing a role with the consumer? Because we talk a lot, again, another trend that's happening.
Great question, Mark.
In terms of digital retail and buying completely online.
Right. And we talk about it, and, buying a car, right? It's a physical thing, right?
It's an
It has
emotional connection.
It's an emotional thing. It's a physical thing. It has a feel to it. It has a smell. It drives a certain way. And, I think we're probably leading here, but I'm skeptical of 100% car transactions 100% of the time, which is what you hear some manufacturers, some industry pundits say. And I'm curious, in your perspective, having someone that drives vehicles, that has been in product design elements and things like that. How important is it? You talked about the clay, right? Smelling the clay, right? Walking around.
Mm-hmm.
How important, where do you see this going from a digital retailing perspective in terms of the
test drives?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the point, the test drives, and to try something new. Every dealer is trying to get new customers. The only way to get them is some touch point of engagement with them, and to use the business term engagement, of meeting them, to understanding who they are. And that's where retailers that can provide tools to the customers, they might be digital tools that get them engaged to begin conversing with them, is what's key. That's why I left with my business partner, his name's Andres Valbuena, to start CarEv, to make this tool that lets the 60% of people that don't know what to get next. Literally, Google has studied, everybody's studied the customer journey, and
Right.
60% plus don't know what to get next. And so they need, if a dealer gives their audience a tool to say, here's, based on your behavior, what you'll find most appealing. It's just so objective, but it's a like, thank you, person, retailer A, for giving me this tool. I kind of trust you, so I'm going to come look at your product after you told me I would like this the best. What do you think? What's the pricing on it? And now people are developing tools, like there's this company I'm involved with called Haggle, that lets you do the price negotiation part purely digitally or on a platform. And so it's like you can decide what you want to see before you're at the dealership. You can be settled on the price you're offering, and then you go look at it. I mean, and that leaves the retailer to be the experience the product, see what it is, see what's new, see the design in person. There's been a lot of articles lately about retailers, not the death of brick and mortar, and people having to go touch the product. And that's certainly true for new cars. And for EVs, it is a complete open field. No consumers, I'm just exaggerating, making up numbers. 1% of people know what EVs are and how they work and how to use them and how to own them. Everybody else is just waiting for, it's an opportunity for the right retailer to hold webinars, start educating your people about what it is to own an EV. How do you own an EV? What do you need to get at your home? What do you need to ask for in your condo association? Things like that.
What a great point, Kevin, because I think a lot of, folks we talk to see it as maybe a threat to the retail environment, because potentially those consumers are more digitally savvy and they want to transact online. But really, it's an opportunity to educate your customer and create an even more association to your brand and to your store by 100%. Being that helpful resource.
Yeah, what a great point.
Being the helpful resource. I mean, that's what, if it's not going to be the retail, it'll be the electric company, or it'll be the new companies that are forming. I mean, you guys probably know the name Scott Painter. He founded TrueCar, Fair. He's founded 37 companies. Now he has something called Nextcar, NXCR, which came out of this company he started called Autonomy. And it's going to be fleet services for subscription services. So in a sense, it's the retailer that's getting you the product. Subscription services is another big thing. I mean, some of the big dealer groups, maybe they'll start making fleets of cars that can be subscription services to offer to their consumers, just as another way of owning a car, a less burdensome way of owning a vehicle.
Yeah, I think, just to sum it up a little bit, I think what you're saying, use the data, right? Which we know that most consumers don't know a lot about EVs, and they don't know really even the next car they want to buy. Understanding that, as a retailer, you can be a helpful advisor in that process and build a relationship with the consumer. And
and there's tools that, I mean, the salespeople might not, they have to be educated and stuff in the world of EVs. But you can still be offering tools even before that's happened, and just let the consumers know. It's not something being pushed on them. It's just something, here is what's available. I'm here to help you.
Right. So actually, Mark and I were curious, and we actually went out to your website. It is car-ed.com is the website.
Yeah.
And we took the test. We took the quiz because, we're consumers too.
For sure.
And it was kind of interesting results. I will tell you, the car, and it wasn't, I would say it's pretty accurate, in a sense. Because it came out for me that I'm a Land Rover, Range Rover kind of person, which was, I would say, I aspire to that vehicle potentially one day. But it was not so far off. But Mark, what was yours?
And I am a Corolla and a minivan person, which is so accurate because it describes our lives to a T.
Oh, does it really?
It really does.
Yeah.
Kevin, especially when you were talking about the lane assist, because I have a 15-year-old who is getting his has gotten his learner permit and is on the road with me. And I can't tell you how many times I am steering him away from the other lane. So that technology is going to be super important for him.
There you go. Yeah.
Those are great results. I mean, it's interesting to see the difference. And it was designed, it's your emotional connection. You guys mentioned the emotional connection that people have to things is what makes you satisfied with the product. So it's based on your own behavior is what makes you emotionally connect with something. Not I need a car for 7 people, like a minivan, or I need a car with highest fuel economy. Those are very important purchase reasons, but they can be decided after you find the one that will feel the best for you, give you the most emotional connection.
Right. So Kevin, that's a good segue into my next question, which is, as a journalist, when you're doing product reviews, what are you looking for in a car? What do you, beyond just kind of the standard metrics of horsepower and performance, what do you like to share about a product or a review with your audience?
Yeah, we like to share, top 3 things that are best on it or unique for the segment it's in. Let's say it's the minivan. What's unique about this product compared to the direct competitors. And
Mark would be very interested in that.
I'd be very interested in that, yeah.
For example. And then 3 things to improve. All the manufacturers have different cycles of making minor model changes. So here's things that aren't so well. Maybe there's USB ports. There could be more. They're kind of like the cup holders of the 2020 year. You can't have enough of those. There's the drivability kind of general feel of it. Yeah. If it is as smooth as they're saying it is, as the image of the brand is. So it's kind of comparison with the brand. And
have you test drove any EVs yet?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Some of the latest product from Kia, the EV6, and Hyundai with the Ioniq 5. So
what would you say, when you're reviewing an EV versus an ICE, are you trying to make comparisons, or are you evaluating the EV for its own merit kind of thing?
The EV for its own merit and compared to the other new EVs. I mean, it's still small enough that it's, comparing to the other EVs and whether they're from a mainstream or a luxury brand. Because the drivability of EVs, it takes some of the drivability comparisons gets taken away. They all have the same smoothness because it's an electric engine. Right. So these dynamic comparisons, they all feel very low center of gravity because the batteries are on the floor of the car. So some of the drivability comparisons aren't as strong of a comparison. So you get back to these other things you're connecting with, the general design elements. The Ioniq 5, for example, I mean, feels like you're driving a phone. They've done a great job of carrying the theme through of this kind of digitized 1980s Pac-Man theme of the exterior design to the interior. How much control the consumer has over the interface, the console that's there, but it's all digital, so you can design it to look how you want and feel. So there's new areas to consider. And then a lot of the writing about them is about how the product can be charged, how the charging process is. So it's a lot of educational stuff still.
Kevin, I'm curious, you mentioned, roughly 1% or maybe even less. No, really no.
Only a small number.
Yeah. really know as much as they can about EVs. And another theme we talk a lot about this season on the walk around is adoption of EVs. So where do you see that going? Some stats are thrown out that 50% of sales are going to be EV related at some point down the line. Or if you live in California, it may be the only option. Where do you see some of the roadblocks or, pathways to adoption of EV?
Definitely the roadblocks are about the charging infrastructure and where does it get charged? I mean, not everyone is fortunate enough to work in an office building where there might be chargers being put in and more chargers being put in as the fleet grows.
Right, or live in a home with a driveway.
City environments, right, city environments where those building owners aren't going to be putting in massive banks of chargers and things like that. So that's definitely a big roadblock. And so the infrastructure, I don't know, for example, here's a big roadblock. Why is there not a charging station at every single corporate-owned gas station right now?
Right.
If we're converting, that's where you stop to fuel your car now. Why are there not charging stations at the gas stations? I don't, that's just blows my mind. I mean, those are where people are used to stopping. Don't you want to keep those people stopping there? All right, it's a charger for them.
It seems like a big opportunity.
I think they think it's competing with their own gas product, but it's not. You're just supplementing it, and
right. Trying to serve another audience.
Well, I think I could give Wawa a good shout out here because we actually had a Wawa built across the street from our campus here recently. And besides for the delicious subs, which are, amazing for gas station food, they put in a whole bunch of Tesla stations, and every morning that bank of Tesla charging stations is packed. I mean, to your point.
Yeah.
I think Wawa may be onto something there, but yeah, but it's a good point. Yeah.
Kevin, another interesting point with EVs too is, as someone who test drives a lot of vehicles, is so many of the models have built in this acceleration factor with EVs, and you got to get to 60 miles an hour in 2.5 seconds.
Crazy.
And there's not a lot of people that really drive that way when you just think about day to day. Is there a safety feature aspect that we need to educate consumers more about when it comes to that? Or is it just a competition thing between the manufacturers?
That's a metric or data label competition thing between the manufacturers to say the whole industry is bred on, I have the best in the category on this metric. I have the most cargo space by 0.1 cubic feet.
Sure.
I have the fastest 0s to 60 time. That's just a metric. So it's not in any way a safety. And as more EVs are released, I mean, they will be trying to be competitive, but there's a natural kind of limit there.
They are amazingly fast.
They really are.
I had the opportunity to test drive
with little effort. It's just a push of a button.
I had a Volvo XC40 Recharge, and I brought it home, and my son, who's 10, I took him in the back seat and
thought he was on a roller coaster.
I was going to say, was he in your lap or something? What do you mean?
What he said was, and I punched it, and this is just like Test Track.
In Universal or Epcot.
Epcot. Yeah. He's like, that, which is the GM, ironically, I guess, is the sponsor of that ride at Disney. But yeah, he was like, this is just like Test Track. When can we get this car? Which was the second statement, because he really liked it. He enjoyed it. But
that'll be a testament to see what manufacturers can make the EV appealing besides the pure acceleration factor. Will there be something else that makes it appealing?
Yeah, well, you hit on it before when, as a someone who drives and rates vehicles or reviews them, the drivability is very similar in ways, right? The acceleration, there's no transmission with different points of, it's a totally different, hopefully it doesn't become a commodity in a sense. Do you think that's a risk, Kevin, in that no way?
Definitely. And that's where the people seeking that opportunity point of the risk of that to the regular way the vehicles are designed and made are the ones that are trying to promote subscription services. They're saying, well, these are all going to feel the same. What else can we take away from you for the burden of ownership? So I mentioned Scott Painter, the next car, it's a fleet of EVs that you can just pay one monthly fee. It includes insurance, drive for 3 months like a lease, 3 years like a lease. And that's all you have to do. Just here's the car. It becomes a product. But he's making his fleet, it's in this case, a fleet of Teslas. So he knows those products are appealing. But what if it was a fleet of Hondas that are electrified?
Right.
And maybe they're not as dynamic performance or something. Would people still be appealing? Would that still appeal to people?
It's interesting as you're talking, it's giving me thoughts. And I saw something recently, on the Apple car, right? The rumored long
on again, off again.
Yeah. On again, off again. But, in a sense, what you're saying kind of aligns with the Apple mantra of design.
Sure.
Right. Design first. And
just think about that brand equity that already exists in that car.
Yeah.
It hasn't even come out yet.
Right. And I always think about, with, Apple didn't invent the MP3 player, right? They perfected it with the iPod.
Yeah.
Right. And could this be one of those Apple moments,
We'll see. Well, Kevin, you may have heard about our next segment on the podcast. It really is, what we like to say is sweeping the nation of automotive podcasts. We call it a sure thing, where Elliot here will give us a few hot takes, and then we ask our guest, is it a sure thing, what he's saying, or is it not? And Elliot, I think you have some good ones for Kevin today.
We prepared.
We did?
Yeah. And
surprisingly.
The name might have sure thing, but it really is a Spoto sure thing. That's for sure.
Collaboration.
Absolutely. And we did some research, Kevin, and we came across a list by Edmunds.com of the 50 worst cars of all time. And number one on that list was the 2001 Pontiac Aztek. And I'm going to say that I believe the 2001 Pontiac Aztek is the worst car of all time. Sure thing or not a sure thing, Kevin?
Sure thing.
Man, that was a quick answer.
That was a quick one. Did you ever drive a Pontiac Aztek?
No, it was before my driving. No, I did not. I did not drive it, but just the general, if you happen to spot one out on the road today, you can see it did not wear well.
That had the removable or the top, right? It was a hat, like a
really odd back, right?
Yeah.
That was an odd front light design. It was just nothing. The general curb appeal of that vehicle.
All kinds of strange going on with that.
Yeah.
car.
So I thought Edmunds nailed it.
All right, you're 1 for 1.
Yeah, that's I thought they did. All right, that's good.
Good start.
So we also found a list by Edmunds, Kevin, of the best cars of all time.
Okay.
Now
that's way harder.
Yeah, way harder. Number one on that list, I believe, and I'm going to get the year wrong because I'm doing it by memory, but I believe it was the 1938 Ford. Ford. It was a 1938 Ford,
yeah.
which
the model really doesn't matter.
Right. But it was like the first everyman car.
Right. The first kind of commuter car.
But I disagree with that. And this may warm your heart, Kevin, because of your background. But I believe the number one car of all time to be the 1990 Acura NSX, a car well ahead of its time, all aluminum, that forced Ferrari to be a better Ferrari. Kevin, is that a sure thing or not a sure thing? 1990 Acura NSX, best car of all time.
Gosh, I was there in those years, so it's going to be really hard for me to. I'm trying to be unbiased on that, as you said. It is a sure thing. It is one of the best.
Wow, 2 for 2.
Wow.
I think so. For the exact reasons you said. I mean, it was the era, the beginning of the era for the internet in the 90s of, democratization of information. And what better example for you to bring up, Elliot, than this democratization of performance, which is what Honda's all about. And Mr. Soichiro Honda, the founder, what he was about. And so it was this pure embodiment of the founder of that company and what he wanted to make for a car after what he made for motorcycles and scooters and everything that was the founding of Honda.
Yeah.
And it made, I mean, to this day, you point to new sports performance cars, and you think back to that original NSX where they were trying to make this accessible to everybody.
So Kevin, I'm going to throw one into the mix just to see what you think as a challenge to Elliot here.
Okay.
You talk about performance, you talk about accessibility. What about the Toyota Supra?
Oh, man.
That's a good one, right?
As one of the best?
As one of the best, a contender for one of the best.
Maybe not.
Your silence speaks volumes.
No, maybe not. A little delay there. Maybe not a sure thing. Certainly, certainly a very storied brand, and model extension coming out of Celica and Celica Fastback, and then the Supra, and so.
All right.
Okay.
Well,
all right.
You heard it, and we do have a bonus for you.
We do have one more before we wrap up.
And some people may not know this about Kevin, but Kevin is an alumni of Cornell and Georgetown University. And we did a little research here, and we found some of the top celebrity, or I guess famous, most notable. That's a good way to put it. Thanks.
Yes.
Alumni of Cornell University. And some of it surprised me.
Yeah,
I will say, probably Huey Lewis, Huey Lewis in the News.
And the news.
Yeah, don't forget the news.
That's for the end of the baby boomers and Gen Xers. Yep.
Yep. And some of the other people on this list, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Kurt Vonnegut, Bill Nye, the science guy, right?
Yeah.
Everyone loves Bill Nye. But I believe that the most notable alumni from Cornell is actually Superman himself, Mr. Christopher Reeve.
You didn't know that, did you, Kevin?
No, I've heard of Christopher Reeve.
You have? Okay.
Yeah.
But would you think that that's a sure thing or not a sure thing, Kevin?
As the most notable is Christopher Reeve? You mentioned some of those other names in there, so that's not a sure thing. No.
Okay.
No.
It is a very interesting fact, but the list of the Cornell alumni goes on and on. They're everywhere over the world. So.
Yeah, we didn't even mention. Did I mention Kurt Vonnegut?
You did.
That's a good one.
That's a great one.
Who would be yours, Mark, out of this list here?
I got to go with RBG.
Yeah, that's a good one.
She's probably the most notable. Although, Superman's pretty high up there in terms of awareness, but RBG.
Yeah,
that's it.
I think Jimmy Smith is another one.
Yes, that's right.
You're
we
right.
didn't even mention that.
You're right. We did not mention Jimmy
LA
Smith.
Law, so there's a bunch from the theater program.
Well, Kevin, this has been a really interesting and fun conversation. You've given our audience a lot to think about in terms of product, how dealers can engage, and certainly with the technology and EVs on the horizon, a lot to learn here.
Yeah, and for retailers, be an educator.
Yeah.
Help your consumer make the decision, right? And
I love that.
I think that's a fantastic point. And go check out car-ed.com.
Yeah, take the quiz. And let's see. Why don't you comment when we post this episode?
Yeah.
What is your favorite car of all time?
Yeah.
What's your worst car of all time? We'd love to see what the audience thinks.
Definitely.
Kevin, thanks so much. And we look forward to more of your product reviews in the near future. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Kevin.